Name?
Beverly Washburn.
Where and when were you born?
Oh my, in Rushville in 1931, I think.
Where did you go to high school?
In Rushville.
What was the name of it?
Just Rushville High School.
Okay. Did you graduate with any specific honors or awards?
Yes, I was valedictorian of my class and I got the music award.
What instrument did you play in high school?
Tuba. But I think I got the award because of singing. And I was in a girls' ensemble called 12 Little Girls.
What activities were you involved in high school?
Speech class. I did a lot of public speaking. Actually won the state contest for public speaking my senior year. That's about all, because I was working after school, so I got back on my free time.
Your father, where was he from?
Kentucky.
What educations did he have?
He had started to college, but unfortunately his family fell into bad affairs and he had to leave college. So then he worked at various jobs the rest of his life.
Okay. If you don't mind me asking, what were the problems that he had to go through?
Apparently, his father had died. My grandfather was killed by lightning. And the affairs were put in the hands of a cousin, and apparently he misused the funds. There wasn't any left for Dad.
And your mother, what was her education?
She went just to 8th grade. And then she worked at a glove factory until she was married.
What was your relationship like with your parents?
Very close to my father, not as close to my mother.
So, where did you go after high school? What did you do?
After I graduated, I worked there in town, and I had the concessions at the Ball Diamond for the summer, as well as working at the store in downtown, a ladies' store, sort of like a small department store. And I did that until I joined the Air Force.
What made you want to join the Air Force?
I wanted to get a college education. I had received 2 scholarships to 2 different schools, but I had no way of making money to fill in the gaps. So one Sunday, my dad would pick up the Indianapolis Times, and one Sunday I read that they had started the Women's Air Force. And I thought, this is my way out. And so my father took me to Indianapolis to take the exam, and in January I was off to Texas.
And what did your friends think about you joining the Air Force?
They didn't think it was a very good idea. Some of them already labeled me whore, and it hurt. But I think they changed their minds.
How old were you when you enlisted?
I had had my 18th birthday. But my birthday's in January.
Did you need permission from your parents to be able to join?
I don't recall. I don't think so. Because during that time 18 was, I think you pretty much had your maturity.
And what made you want to pick the Air Force versus anything else?
I like to fly. My brother was in the Navy and he flew, and he had his private plane, and I had done lots of flying. There's a little airport in Rushville where I grew up, and my brother would take me on flights if I kept the plane clean. Kept it floated down, and once he had a biplane, and we flew upside down over the house, and my mother nearly had a heart attack seeing us hanging out there, but it was fun. I had hoped someday I would have had my license. In fact, at a point, my husband and I started studying and taking some lessons at the local airport, but there just wasn't enough time.
What did your family think about you joining the Air Force?
My dad thought it was a good idea. My mother didn't. She wanted me to marry the boy I had been dating and settle down on the farm, which I didn't want to do.
When you joined the Air Force, what were your roles? What were your obligations?
Well, we went through basic training for 3 months. I think it was 3 months. Which was quite interesting. At that time, we had rifle training, jumping from a parachute. Not a real one. They have a stand where they let you go and you fall down. Various classes, and trying to think of all of them. I found them all interesting. Technical classes, basic math, because you didn't have to be a high school graduate to get in if you could pass tests and things. So it was I remember it covered a lot of areas. I think there was even a basic first aid course and things like that. Lots of physical fitness.
So how did the Air Force Band get started?
Well, there were several influences. There were a lot of people there going through basic who wanted to get into the band. They were instrumentalists, including myself. I thought that would be great. But there was no integration. I couldn't go and play in the men's band. You have to realize that during this time, not only in the military, but in the country in general, if you went to a symphony concert, you wouldn't see a woman playing in the orchestra at all. Once in a while, the harpist would be a female, but there was no integration of the sexes in many things, and especially musical things. So the women wanted something to do too. But so we had little groups, but it wasn't long before the head of the Air Force, I can't think of his name right now, met a former student that he had, and she had graduated, and asked her to join and she went to the band school. But in the meantime, before all this happened, we were just getting together as much as we could, borrowed into. If you had an instrument, then they had it. Wrote home and said, "Please send it down, Mom." And for a tuba, they loaned one to me. And then we just got our embouchures back and practiced. But for retreats and everything, we still had the loudspeaker that would the basic people march to. And up on the hill, where the men were, they had their bands. There was no integration, of course. But in the meantime, we just, when we had time from our other jobs, we got together and played. But when the girl came who had gone to band school came, then they decided to start officially the WAF band. And so before she got there, I was sort of keeping the group together. When she got there, she was the conductor. But I had the chorus, and then when she wasn't around, wasn't available, I was conducting. And my job after basic, I was organist and choir director at the base chapel. So I had a lot of music there, and I started a choir in the basic people, and then when our group began to get together, we would sing some too, but we weren't officially the WAF band until this other lady came back from band school. Then they gave us a barracks so we could all be in together, because before that I was attached to a military unit up on the base, and I had to go up on the other base to get my mail and all that sort of thing, which was a pain in the neck. But we finally were recognized then as a group, which was nice.
How long were you in the Air Force band?
From the beginning until I got out, and let's see. It's hard for me to get the dates. I think probably I was actually in it only about the formal band, about a year. Because I was there before it really got started, and then I got married. Then I got pregnant. And they didn't allow you at that time to stay in the military if you were pregnant. So I was out. But I was in long enough to have us really begin to be a good group, because they finally brought in Captain Nisley, who had conducted in the WAC band during World War II. And she was great. She had all kinds of enthusiasm, sparkle, and she changed things a lot. We were in the usual olive drab World War II looking outfits, and she said, we're going to be different, and so we got nice blue uniforms. She had some pull, and things really began to brighten. And she just had a bubbly personality that she could pull us all together real fast.
How did you meet your husband?
I was doing lots of singing, and I was singing solo for an Easter cantata, and the men's little symphony in blue, as it was called, was accompanying. And I went to a rehearsal with just me, because to polish up all my entrances and difficult parts with the orchestra, and I noticed there was a new viola player in the band. But he was sort of cute. I mean, when I got to know him, I liked him even more. Then he eventually became my husband.
Did you have any children?
Yes, we had two. Our son, Brooks, was born in San Antonio. When I became pregnant, I had to get out. They wouldn't allow pregnant women in. So then,
Still in?
My husband, so to fill in the time, I was studying various places I could take. Before I was out, I was studying classes at the base that were from Trinity College in San Antonio, extension courses. And then when I got out, I went to a class for accounting and such, business office materials, and worked there until I got a job. And while I was pregnant, and then the baby was born, and after a while, found somebody, the lady who was in the apartment upstairs had a little boy about the same age, so she watched the baby and I went back to work.
What made you move to Potsdam?
My husband had gone to college here in Potsdam, and Helen Hosmer was head of the music school at that time, and she was also a great choir director, and she was on tour, and she knew that Bob was there, and somehow Bob contacted her, and she came out to the apartment and offered him a job when he got out to come back to Potsdam. So that was good because he was also on the side playing in the San Antonio Symphony, and Alessandro had offered him a job when he got out. So he had to make a choice, but he decided he wanted to stick with his teaching music rather than just a straight performance. Came to Potsdam, where we've been ever since.
When you moved up here, did you have a job that you gradually got?
Not right away. I had, Brooks was, of course, our son was small. I was taking care of him. I would take extension courses, a course here or there. They weren't really extension. I would go into a class when Bob could watch Brooks, or then I would go to a class. And then it wasn't very long, I was pregnant again with our daughter, and we had the same routine. I'd go in and take classes when he had a free time and I could drop them off in his office. And for a period of a few years, I got my class, my degree.
What was your degree
in? Elementary, elementary education. So I taught, I started out teaching 5th grade, but we soon moved up to 6th grade social studies.
Okay. When did you retire?
Oh, I retired the year we were in Egypt for the year. And I can't remember the exact year it was, but it was 20 years after I started. So, and it was one of those times when they were cutting back on things. They were going to have to cut out a teacher, and I said, "Don't do that. I'm going to Cairo with my husband for the year." He had a Fulbright, and so I took a leave of absence in the fall. Then I would I had started teaching in mid-term, and so then they could retire me in January on my birthday. And I had exactly 20 years of teaching at that point, so I qualified for my money I get in retirement fund. So that worked out well.
Why did you go to Egypt?
Well, my husband had Fulbright and to teach at the conservatory in Cairo. And we did a lot of traveling. Before I started teaching, we spent a full year traveling throughout Europe and North Africa. And with our 2 children, and I tutored them. They were 3rd and 5th grade at that point. And then we continued traveling. We together when we were both still teaching, had a government grant, and we spent a summer going across North Africa with a group of mostly blacks. This is when the emphasis of the particular grant was on the teaching black history, that sort of thing, with an emphasis on that as it related to Africa. So we did that, and then we did by ourselves lots and lots of traveling. We covered the Orient and we drove through all of the area that is now under fire. And I think that we had gone to Istanbul, and then we went on into Iran, Afghanistan, down in Pakistan. And it was just wonderful. We never feared for our lives at that time. As we crossed from into Pakistan, we went over the Khyber Bridge, and there were armed people there beside the road, and I now know were members of the Taliban who were around with their rifles. And, it was a little scary, but we had been told, don't get out of your car, just keep moving, and so we did. That was the only thing we saw that in any way related to all the difficulties today.
Okay. Were you involved in any activities or organizations while living in Potsdam?
Yes. The Potsdam Museum was my main feature, and I was with them for quite a long time. And in fact, they named a little garden behind after me. When I retired, I had to retire because my husband was ill, and I had to stay with him. Also, I was very active in AAUW, and I worked for the food bank, distributing food every week, every month. Those were the ones I was most involved with.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Be active, be involved in your community and the world, if possible. If you have a chance to go places, get to know the people, not just whiz through and stay in a luxury hotel, but really get to know the people, which is what we did. It's just a very enriching experience.